Day 39 still estimates of hundreds of Americans, thousands of people with green cards that allows them into our country. Thousands of Afghan allies completely abandoned by Joe Biden behind enemy lines, left to be tortured and murdered by the Taliban terrorists. And 4 U.S. Marines, they are still in the hospital tonight, nearly a month after the terror attack at the Karzai International Airport in Kabul. Now, Joe Biden, he now claims that he has officially turned the page on Afghanistan, taking, I guess, a victory lap. What an insulting thing to say. He's not lifting a finger to help our fellow Americans that he abandoned. This isn't Republican or Democrat. They're our fellow Americans. Come home and try and get me fired. Bring the Americans home. He hasn't even mentioned them in 22 days. How is that possible? I wonder if the families of those trapped inside of Afghanistan behind enemy lines, I wonder if they've turned the page. I wonder if the families of the brave soldiers that died last month in Afghanistan, I wonder if they've turned the page when Joe could have easily evacuated everybody and all our military equipment and our allies and their families before he allowed the Taliban that was on the march all throughout the spring and early summer. He had full control. I wonder if the family of the 7 children killed in Biden's botched drone attack, I wonder if they've turned the page. But Joe Biden thinks that he can simply move on, turn the page, and the media mob always gives him a free pass, just like they did, on that fateful drone strike in Afghanistan. Joe Biden killed 10 innocent civilians, including humanitarians and 7 children. Watch this.
President Biden is warning that last night's drone strike against ISIS-K that was condemned by the Taliban just a short time ago will likely not be the last.
Studies of our drone strikes have suggested that maybe 8 out of 10 times we are hitting the wrong target. We have killed thousands of civilians. Unfortunately, it would be par for the course if there was significant collateral damage from a drone strike in Afghanistan.
Drone strikes have been a feature of the 20-year war on terror. There are thousands of U.S. drone strikes that have resulted in thousands of civilian casualties in several countries. And so, this has actually been something that has been fairly characteristic of the U.S. Mission overseas.
What would the media reaction be if it was Donald Trump that killed humanitarians and children in that drone strike instead of Joe Biden? The mob and the media, they would be hysterical, apoplectic, even during President Trump's successful drone strike, the one that took out the world's biggest terrorist, Soleimani, one of the world's worst evil terrorists for decades, responsible for the deaths of countless American soldiers in Iraq and elsewhere. Even during that successful strike, one without collateral damage, the media mob, they found a way to be outraged. Take a look.
Donald Trump gave them exactly what they wanted by killing Soleimani. And then the other element of it, now all the bets are off on the nuclear capacity and ambition.
By any means, if the Americans thought, or if Trump thought that by taking out Soleimani, Iran is going to recalibrate its posture or policies in the region, I think what we've seen is the exact opposite. They're going to double down in the next phase of this.
It was evident within the first 24 hours that by taking out Qasem Soleimani, Trump has made the situation worse, and that's dangerous for our country.
His decision to strike Soleimani has the result of endangering U.S. troops and embassies and diplomats everywhere.
Donald Trump could have followed the model of, let's say, Obama and Biden and send cargo planes full of cash and other currency and try and bribe the mullahs. Please be nice to us. And then they say down with the United States and chant death to America anyway and burn our flag. Less than 2 years later, Biden drones an innocent family, kills humanitarian aid workers, 7 kids, and America's so-called journalists barely yawn. You don't think the media is corrupt? They are. They have no intention of holding Biden accountable. They never have. On the campaign trail, we witnessed the media. Joe was in the media, protection program, candidate protection program. They allowed him to hide in his basement for months and not say a word. They never asked him tough questions. And now Biden's presidency is an abject failure. His approval numbers, they have plummeted in key battleground states, which, according to even fake news CNN, should terrify Joe Biden. Look at the Gallup numbers. Joe's poll numbers have never been lower, and for good reason. Inflation is skyrocketing and predicted to get much worse. Gas prices up about $1.50 a gallon since he took of the presidency became president on January 20th. That's a lot per gallon. We're paying more for everything we buy, more to heat and cool our homes, more to fill our tanks up. And after shuttering pipelines here at home, Biden is now begging OPEC to produce more oil in the Middle East. By the way, they turned him down. And, of course, he gave a waiver for Vladimir Putin to build his pipeline. Does that make sense? Violent crime is on the rise in every major city. COVID is spreading faster than at any point under Trump. Biden is rationing crucial monoclonal antibody treatments, seemingly to hurt red state governors that are using those therapeutics like Regeneron to save lives. By the way, Biden never mentioned Regeneron or monoclonal antibodies until just a week ago. How pathetic. Afghan, we know it's a disaster and a mitigated failure. Our allies rightly no longer trust us. France, they just recalled their ambassador. Israel, they're threatening to do the same. Every enemy around the world is emboldened, and China's threats grow worse by the day. Our southern border, another unmitigated disaster. You know, for 7 straight months, Joe and his incompetent border czar, Kamala Harris, they twiddle their thumbs. The Washington Post, of all places, they went down to Texas. They asked migrants why they're making the perilous trek to the border. And even the Post reported, quote, they decided to risk everything on a dangerous journey north after hearing from friends and relatives and smugglers that the Biden administration is going to let them in. And by the way, Joe and Kamala, we didn't forget. You want to know the root cause of mass migration? Look in the mirror. You caused it. You also invited this mess. You see the images of migrants camped out under this bridge, some 11,000 of them in Texas. As we speak, they're now being let into our country by the thousands without so much as a simple COVID test, not even a rapid test. No vaccine mandate, shoddy vetting, little to no vetting, actually, very little paperwork. Process, release. That's the Biden immigration policy. In other words, come into the U.S. on a promise that they will show up for a future court date. Almost none of them ever show up. And this week, FoxNews.com, they actually followed some of these migrants after they were processed at the border by Biden's team and then put on a bus, in this case headed to Dallas. But they're being dispersed without COVID tests all around the country and no vaccine mandates either. Take a look. Free food, free transportation, no COVID test, no vaccine mandate. The migrants, the very people that violated our laws, did not respect our sovereignty, our borders. They entered this country illegally. And now, with the help of Joe Biden, he's aiding and abetting. They now are dispersed all over the country. This administration is currently unable and unwilling to say exactly how many, but we do know that these illegal aliens have not been vetted like those who immigrate here legally. And that's why I support legal immigration. Keep in mind, some of the Haitian migrants have been incredibly violent. One group actually attacked U.S. pilots and assaulted ICE officers on a transport flight. And another group took over a DHS bus and then fled the scene before being apprehended. And even worse, HHS documents reveal that during a one-month period in February, there were dozens of incidents of sexual and physical abuse of those unaccompanied migrant children that Joe put in those cages in the middle of the pandemic. And to his credit, Texas Governor Greg Abbott on this program last night, he's now investing $3 billion state of Texas dollars. He has now surged state security forces, called up the guard in his state to the border, even forming a miles-long makeshift border wall with a fleet of vehicles. But that's how desperate he is, because Joe Biden is aiding and abetting the whole process. But there's only so much that Texas can do. The Biden administration is just processing and releasing the migrants into the country. They have total jurisdiction. Biden is not only ignoring the laws of this country, he took an oath to uphold the laws and the Constitution of the United States. He's aiding and abetting the law breaking. Donald Trump had all of this under complete control, and Joe abandoned every single thing that was working. We got to a 25-year low of illegal immigrants coming into the country. A humanitarian crisis, a national security crisis, a public health crisis. I support legal immigration with checks and vetting to make sure people don't have radical associations, proof that you have the ability to take care of yourself and your family financially. And yes, in the middle of a pandemic, we need to know that you don't have COVID-19 or any other disease. And of course, all of this could be resolved if Joe Biden would tell the migrants not to come, end this idiocy of process and release, and go back and finish the wall Donald Trump was building. And by the way, deport anyone that crosses illegally. And by the way, bring back the stay in Mexico policy and just simply enforce the law. That's not going to happen. Biden's socialist base does not believe in borders, doesn't believe in U.S. sovereignty, doesn't even believe in property rights or the Constitution or the rule of law, because there's no outrage from the left. And Democrats even trying to push through their amnesty using the reconciliation process rather than actually changing the law, and that $3.5 trillion new Green Deal socialist monstrosity. And tonight, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's the real Speaker of the House. She's apoplectic over a report that certain Haitian migrants could be temporarily held at a facility in Gitmo. Maxine Waters is calling Biden's treatment of the Haitian migrants worse than slavery. Take a look.
I'm pissed. I'm unhappy, and I'm not just unhappy with the cowboys who were running down Haitians and using their reins to whip them. I'm happy with the administration. We are following the Trump policy. He is the one that does not follow the Constitution and would not allow those seeking refuge to be able to petition to get into the country. What the hell are we doing here? What we witnessed takes us back hundreds of years. What we witnessed was worse than what we witnessed in slavery.
This is Biden's policies. By the way, Trump's been out of office a solid 9 months. By the way, make no mistake, an all-out civil war is about to break out in the Democratic Party. Right now, Maxine Waters, AOC, the radical squad, they hold all of the cards. Nancy Pelosi knows it. She's Speaker in the House in name only. She's terrified of all of them. Now, this is why the Iron Dome funding, that was left out of the Democrats' new budget. That's why Democrats are trying hard to pass this insane $5 trillion new Green New Deal socialist legislation. Human infrastructure, they call it. This is why the crisis at the southern border has imploded. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.